joining us from India, and good morning to all of our colleagues joining in from Europe. I'm extremely pleased and delighted to welcome you all to the first edition of the IFCCI HR Conclave being organized over the next 2 days. I firmly believe that numbers speak louder than anything else, and we're very excited to have 1,500 registrations for this conclave, which is the largest attendance that we've had in a very long time at the Chamber. Between today and tomorrow, we bring to you 30 expert speakers, including CEOs, CHROs, and industry leaders from India, France, and the APAC region. This event has been put together under the aegis of the IFCCI HR Committee, which is one of the most active committees at the Chamber today. And for this, I'd like to thank the leadership, our chairman, Shrikant Lonekar, who is whole-time director and CHRO Pernod Ricard for Gulf, SAARC region, and India. He's also the convener of this conclave. And of course, our vice chairpersons, Pallavi Tyagi, CHRO Capgemini India, and Niruban Rupatevan, head of HR at BNP Paribas GSO. This conclave is also the culmination of all the discussions and exchanges that have taken place within the committee since the past 12 months. We all know how much our lives and businesses have been impacted by the pandemic, and how especially the HR function has had to step up and adapt to the crisis to protect organizations and its people. We've seen many discussions at the Chamber, and several best practices have been shared, whether it's HR policies and practices, whether it's managing remote working, training and development, and so on and so forth. So I must congratulate you all, because it's ultimately the HR function that has really helped businesses and corporate leaders in navigating this crisis. India and France, as you know, share a long-standing and strategic partnership since decades, and French companies are thriving in India. The Indo-French Chamber of Commerce is a 40-year-old organization, and today we're spread across 5 offices in India, and we bring together a network of 700 member companies, which are both French companies and Indian companies, and we provide a wide range of surveys to our members, from events to policy advocacy to committees to assisting French companies in setting up their presence in India. I'd like to sincerely thank and congratulate my team, Sapna Verma, Head HR and Recruitment Services, and her team members, Neha Nithani and Bhakti Bakai, who have worked tirelessly in putting this program together for you. I'd also like to thank all of our partners and sponsors, our platinum sponsors, Capgemini, EM Lyon, and Pernod Ricard, gold sponsors, Amadeus, silver sponsors, Legrand and Sodexo, knowledge partner, Trilegal, and of course, our media partner, People Matters. We will now share a special message that has been sent to us by His Excellency, Mr. Emmanuel Lena, Ambassador of France to India. Can we please play the video? Thank you.
I'm delighted to join you for this HR conclave organized by IFCCI. This is a very timely meeting. COVID has put a lot of strain on our organization, on all of us, on our companies. Work from home, less interaction with colleagues, less conviviality, more digital. These have been huge challenges. We've had to invent some new way of working together, new way of cooperating, and I'm very proud our companies have proven immensely resilient. But all this will not stop just after we've won the war against COVID, which hopefully will soon happen. Something will remain, and we will have to be the champion in this new era. We will have to master better than ever the way to work from distance, to work with digital instruments without losing the human touch. So it's very timely that we can exchange the best practices, the best recipes we have invented during this period. And I'm very grateful that IFCCI took the initiative to organize this workshop. And I'm convinced that this will bring, as the title of the workshop said, to a renaissance for our companies, and our crew will be more efficient, but also will feel better at work and will have a better life within the companies also.
Okay, thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that video. It now gives me great pleasure to welcome our convener for the conclave. Shrikant Lonekar is whole-time director and CHRO at Pernod Ricard for Gulf, SAARC region and India. He has close to 35 years of experience in leading HR in India, China, Gulf, South Asia, Europe, and the USA. His key focus areas have been leading HR transformation, building systems and processes, defining and developing culture, advising CEOs on strategic business and people matters, developing talent and leadership capability, and enabling growth of the business. Shrikant is chairman of our HR committee, and we are extremely pleased and honored to have him on board with us. Thank you very much, and over to you, Shrikant.
Thank you, Payal. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for a very apt introduction to this conclave. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to the HR conclave of IFCCI, Resilience Leading to Renaissance. Business is dynamic by nature. Turbulence is not new. There are highs and lows. Booms and depressions happen periodically. Forces beyond control make a business more speculative and interesting. And entrepreneurs and leaders thrive on these challenges. But major dynamic things generally happen in some geographies, some industry segments, and mostly provide some indication ahead of time to be prepared for such challenges. There are experts to alarm us that things are going to be significantly different soon. History tells that. It helps in preparing for the crisis, or it may be an opportunity. COVID-19 has been a unique crisis, defying all past experiences. There were no signals or warnings of its arrival. There was no idea how deep and wide its impact would be. There is still no idea when and how it will end. And most importantly, it impacted every known system around, not only businesses. It is not only the health problem, it is a systemic challenge and it demands a systemic solution. We all understand that. When people are faced with difficult problems, they generally turn to God. When businesses are faced with crisis, they generally turn to experts. Unfortunately, there were no experts on COVID-19 crisis when it arrived. It took everyone by surprise. So all of us had to work towards finding solutions. Digital, well-being, mental health, all this came into light. Leadership, culture, inclusion, diversity, social connect, work-life balance. These concepts now have gained a new meaning thanks to COVID-19. We are now in the recovery phase. Work, that is what it is and how it is delivered. Worker, who the new talent will be, and workplace, where from the work will be and can be delivered. All of us are recalibrating these concepts. Some industry segments, of course, experienced a positive impact of COVID-19. For example, pharma, e-commerce, select FMCG sector companies, digital media and technology, just to name a few. Some segments are still challenged and with unique questions about how do we retain our customers? What is customer adoption? What is customers' new expectations and delight? And who and where is our new competition? For HR professionals, employee engagement has a new meaning. Pulse surveys, tracking and tracing, cautious reopening, cost management, workforce planning and reorganizing, home support for work, impact on families and employees, access to hospitals in emergencies, designing new policies. These are some of the things that have kept HR professionals busy during this time. On the other hand, CEOs and CXOs are reinforcing that culture and employee well-being are the most important parts of the organization. a lot of research and work is happening in that area. The questions are, who expected that these will become our priorities? Who was prepared for this? And time is revealing answers to these questions. Those who believed a business needs a strong, capable, and agile organization to sustain its success in long term. Those who invested in culture. Those who cultivated a never say die attitude in their organization. Those who believed, irrespective of a stellar success history, that our best days are in future. And those who believed spending time, effort, and money on building systems, process, and particularly people capability is not a cost but an investment. You will observe such organizations have been able to manage the crisis better and are making a smarter recovery. In this conclave, we are going to discuss these issues. We bring to you stories, experiences, best practices, and wisdom of most accomplished leaders, global and local, who are here to enlighten us all. We expect this will help us in shaping our thinking and aid us in designing our strategies for the future. The chief theme of the conclave is resilience leading to Renaissance. How do you build or develop resilience? Mainly during normal times, that would become your strength in crisis times and would help you to bounce back. To deliberate on this question, the conclave has been designed as keynote addresses, expert speaker talks, and panel discussions. You will meet 25 distinguished global leaders, CEOs and CHROs, and experts in specialist fields in this conclave. In addition, we are happy to announce that an e-publication on the theme of the conclave will be published during this conclave tomorrow, which will be shared with all participants. We have chosen 4 sub-themes, which will be delivered as panel discussions. First, new ways of leading and managing teams. How the new leader will be and what new challenges will they face in managing talent. This will be an exclusive CEO panel. Easter Martinez of People Matters will help us expertly by moderating panel comprising of top CEOs, namely Ashwin Yardi of Capgemini, Alexis Telemaco of Total, Suresh Narayanan of Nestle, and Francisca Ecuper of BNP Paribas. All 4 CEOs, they will be talking to Easter. Second panel will be on diversity and inclusion. Does this topic mean something different, more significant in the new world? Why should you start thinking more about it now? Niruban Ruputevan, the BNP Paribas, who is also vice chairman of our HR committee, will moderate this panel consisting of top experts in this subject, namely Lani Montoya of Pernod Ricard, Adirupa Sengupta of Common Purpose, Sara Echeveri of Legra, and Jay Seth of BNP Paribas. On day 2, we will have 2 more panels. The first one will be new employment models that will discuss about what is work and how it is delivered. Will the contracts of employment change in future and how the workplace will look like? Meenal Chowkar of Legra will be our expert moderator, who will be joined by eminent panel of dignitaries, namely Manu Wadhwa of Sony Pictures Network, Nicola Peugeot of Emilon Business School, Atul Gupta of Trilegal, and Nitin Sethi of Aon. And the 4th and most important panel discussion will be on mental well-being and building resilience at workplace. While health is in focus, why employers should focus on well-being and how will it lead to building resilience for the organization? That is the question. Suvarna Mishra of Sodexo will be the expert moderator for this most diverse panel comprising of distinguished leaders, namely Yash Mahadik of Lupin Group, Soni Iqbal of Egon Zehnder, Shalini Nair Kumar of Amadeus Lab, and Dr. Marcus Rani of Human Age. That is one major part of the conclave. In addition, we are privileged to present 2 eminent global CHROs who will deliver keynote addresses. Cedric Rama of Pernod Ricard Group, who will talk to us shortly, and Anne Label of Capgemini Group, who will talk to us tomorrow. And that's not all. There are 3 experts and leaders who will be addressing the conclave on relevant themes. Mani Ganeshan of Amadeus Lab, Isabelle Hope of Emilon Business School, and Anne Desenmond of Business France. In all, we have 25 star speakers addressing the participants during these 2 days connecting to the main theme of resilience leading to Renaissance. We have more than 500 registrations, as Payal said just now. And this is a record in itself. Some of you are participating on our live channel on YouTube. You can post questions in the chat, but my apologies in advance. We may take select few questions if and as time may permit. But don't hesitate to write in the chat box. We would be happy to propose it to the moderators. As a convener of the conference and on behalf of HR committee and IFCCI, it is my great pleasure and privilege to welcome all speakers and participants. Thank you for joining us. Now, let us begin. Let me invite our chief guest for the keynote address, Mr. Cedric Rama. Cedric Rama, EVP, HR and Sustainability and Responsibility, Pernod Ricard Group, Paris. Cedric Rama holds a master's degree in HR management from Paris Dauphine University. Prior to joining Pernod Ricard, he worked at Microsoft as training and compensation manager. In 1993, he joined Orangina, France, where he held successively the positions of HR manager, regional sales director, and HR director. After the merger of Orangina and Pampri, he became Human Resources and Information Systems Director of Orangina Pampri in 1999, before joining Rika SA as HR Director in 2002. Cedric was appointed Executive VP Human Resources of Pernod Ricard Americas in July 2008. And as of July 2016, he is Executive Vice President Human Resources and Sustainability and Responsibility, Pernod Ricard Group. With that, now I invite Cedric to kindly deliver his keynote address and enlighten us. Over to you, Cedric.
Thank you very much, Shrikant. Hello to everyone. I'm very happy to meet you today, even if I would have preferred to see you in real life, of course, next time maybe. First, I want to thank the HR community, the HR committee, of Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry for inviting me to this conclave. I want to compliment the organizers for choosing an apt theme to the conclave. Indeed, when crises are coming, resilience is becoming a trendy topic. And I was looking for some definitions, short definitions. And I will keep one very simple, which is the ability to bounce back quickly from something. To me, resilience leading to renaissance means we are talking about what strengths help a business to remain unaffected, and even more than that, stronger, irrespective of many challenges it faces. We faced an unprecedented challenge with COVID-19, and my heart goes out to all the victims. And we didn't have so much victims within Pernod Ricard, but every victim is too much, of course. I know that I'm talking to the HR professionals and leaders who have helped their businesses to overcome this challenge and are now guiding it to the new future. We should be proud of our achievement, and we don't usually receive many thanks for that. So let's do it, and congratulations to all of you. My contribution to your conclave will be to share our experience around the two main topics: what happened to Pernod Ricard during the COVID crisis, and resilience leading to renaissance, meaning for us, why are we stronger today than a year ago? So what happened to Pernod Ricard during the COVID crisis? First, a quick overview of Pernod Ricard's situation. We are the number 2 in our industry. We are a very strong leader in Asia. We are head-to-head to Diageo in Europe and Diageo in leading in the US. That's why they are the number 1, by the way, as it's the biggest market in the world. India is the number 3 country for us in the world, so it's a very important country for Pernod Ricard. We believe that we have the best portfolio because we have brands across all segments, and we are the only one with that. And we are covering all geographies. But more than that, we have our own distribution network, which is, we believe, a true competitive advantage. And it's an important point because it's starting to speak about people here. And indeed, when we want to speak about resilience, culture is fundamental to find the right way of managing crisis. And our purpose at Pernod Ricard is créateur de convivialité. So as said by Mr. Ambassador, the issue here with the COVID-19, of course, is how can you create conviviality in this new world? This is a true challenge for us, and it's a challenge because it's truly our purpose within Pernod. We have a decentralized business model, so it's important as well. I will come back to that. And people are at the heart of the system. So I know that I'm speaking to HRs, and of course, everyone is saying that, but I can just give you one or two interesting things on that front. Every year, I'm traveling with Alexandrika, the CEO, chairman and CEO of Pernod, across the world to meet our CEOs and HRDs to speak about their talent. It's not a business review, it's just focus on people. How do you develop your talent? What kind of talent do you need for the future? And how can we organize everything here? It's not so common to have a CEO for a big company like this spending more than a month per year just speaking about people with his teams. So it's just to show you that people at the heart, it's not just a word, it's a reality. And by the way, we were launching as well an SNR roadmap 2 years ago, sustainability and responsibility roadmap, and people are the middle of this. And when I say people, it's Pernod people, of course, but not only. It's our community, it's our contractors, it's our suppliers as well. And we have this vision of the ecosystem around us. I will come back to that as well. And of course, we have very strong values, and we have three main. We don't like to put that on the wall. We prefer to leave the values. The first one is very important for us in our business, which is strong sense of ethics, which is key in our business. But to speak about resilience, the two others are very, very important. Mutual trust. Mutual trust, because when you're in a decentralized organization, you need to have this mutual trust because you don't look at what's happening on the day-to-day everywhere in the world. You trust your people to do that. And the third one is coming from the founder, Paul Ricard, which is entrepreneurship. And I will go back to that as well in a few minutes. We launched as well a strategic plan in 2018. The name was Transform and Accelerate. And we were building really the way to leadership for us with 21 inflection points. I won't go through these 21, but I keep three important, I think, for the topic of today. In HR, for example, we have people centricity. We had a lot of things around people centricity to put the people at the center and not having only an HR perspective, but a people perspective within the organization. On an organizational point of view, we wanted to really continue to empower people, because when you are decentralized, you need to be sure that the decision is taken at the right level in the organization. And on the SNR point of view, we launched Taking Care of Each Other 18 months ago, so before COVID, which was very relevant, of course, which is a health and safety program across the group to be sure that we are taking care of each other. So this is a quick overview of Pernod. And now, how COVID has impacted our business. So of course, this has impacted our purpose, créateur de convivialité, creator of conviviality, because it's very hard to reimagine this conviviality in the digital world. So we're very creative, even if I do believe that true relationship and connection are stronger than the digital one. Our business were very impacted, of course. I can give you, we have four main channels. I'll start with travel retail. Of course, travel retail, minus 80%, of course, because no more planes in the airports. But we have the on-trade as well. On-trade, restaurant, bars, nightclub, closed for 2 months all over the world at the same time. And still now we have more than 2/3 of the on-trade closed across the world, which is, of course, impacting hugely our business. After that, we have the off-trade. The off-trade is pretty resilient, actually, it's growing, meaning we have a transfer from on-trade to on-trade to off-trade, sorry. And of course, the e-commerce, and as for everyone, e-commerce is flying. And the impact was, of course, on our ways of working. We were starting to have, in some affiliates, good initiative on the remote work. But of course, here, overnight, we had to switch from zero potentially to 100% remote work when we had a tough confinement, especially in April last year, almost everywhere in the world at the same time. So this is the situation of Pernod during COVID. But what is maybe more important for today is to understand why today we are stronger than a year ago. And this is resilience. I could see three main topics here. First, back to the core. We believed it was absolutely key to really go back to the core and to be sure that we are true with ourselves here. The second point will be on managing the day-to-day, which was really the management part, how we can manage and be agile on the day-to-day. And even more importantly, how we prepare the future. And this was really the job performed by the top management of the company. So back to the first point, back to the core. I was speaking about people first within Pernod Ricard. I give you a very simple example. Since the beginning of the crisis, now the number one topic at the agenda of every single board meeting or COMEX or CODI meeting is health and safety, which was not necessarily the case before, but was speaking about our people on the health and safety point of view systematically. And by the way, during the crisis, we changed the paces of these meetings. For the board, for example, we had 2 boards per month, instead of 1. For the COMEX, for example, at the group level, we had a weekly call, and usually it's a monthly meeting. So we had these different paces in meetings. But whatever the meeting, whatever the pace, health and safety was at the first point of the agenda. And everyone knew that within the group, which was important in the way of for people to see that we're taking care of people. The second important point for us back to the core was a decentralized model. We wanted and we had really leveraged this decentralized model, empowering people to do what they have to do. We didn't issue a lot of global rules during the crisis. It was more to share best practices. All the meetings were to share what was happening because it was not done at the same time. And we really didn't want to have corporate rules on that. We had very few. I will come back to 1 or 2 of them. But the idea was really freedom in a framework. So we wanted to really design this framework and to give freedom to people to act and to be empowered to do the right thing for them, their business and their people in their different countries. And to do that, we were relying on our values, and living the values was absolutely key. And especially speaking about trust for this decentralization business model, but more importantly, entrepreneurship, because we could see popping up everywhere in the world a lot of initiatives far beyond our business, and typically a lot of our plans totally changed their way of working because they were producing, for example, hydroalcoholic. And everywhere in the world, we had this kind of things in the US, in India, in France, in Germany. So this was initiative, local initiative. This was not a plan for Pernod Ricard done by the corporate. No, it was really popping up everywhere. And I could have many, many examples like this where we were supporting the communities around us, but it was done locally. So entrepreneurship was absolutely important. So back to the core is a key strength to build resilience. After that, managing the day-to-day, it was really, of course, absolutely mandatory. And here again, the main word was freedom in a framework. So resource allocation, for example, on A&P, so how we advertise our brands. Of course, we were cutting A&P like hell in some areas. Typically on travel retail, we didn't choose any A&P as we didn't have any consumer in front of us. But it was important as well to be able to be agile on these kind of things. And we didn't issue any rule at the group level, but it was done locally because we believe that people are, and we want people to be empowered to take the right decision for the consumer. We had, of course, to cut structure cost, and one of the very few global rules was to have a recruitment freeze at the group level. And this was part of the very few rules we put in place. But when I'm speaking about freedom in a framework, as a COMEX member, you could, even during this recruitment freeze, take some decision to recruit people because we believe you can do the right things for your country or your region. So again, freedom in a framework. Managing the day-to-day was maybe best and the most important challenge was the ways of working. And going to remote work was very interesting. Fortunately, technology was there, so we didn't have any issue to do that. But we realized very quickly as well that one size doesn't fit all in these kind of things. And we can see that from the beginning, depending on the countries, and after that, even in the same country, we could see very different behaviors with the remote work. And if I gave the example in France, everyone and the unions especially wanted to have everyone at home during the first confinement. And during the second wave for the confinement, the same unions wanted to have people at work because they could see the damage and on the mental health, for example, for a lot of people. So one size doesn't fit all, and I think it's a very good rule for the future, by the way, in our organization. So agility was absolutely key, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and it's really the second very important thing for resilience, managing the day-to-day with agility. And the third point is to prepare the future. And for me, it's the most important one. And this was really the role of the top management. As I said, we have a transformation agenda at the beginning. It was a plan for 3 years. And actually, we took the opportunity to accelerate this transformation, to rebase our resource allocation. And part of this transformation, we have a digital transformation of part of our business. Of course, we put a lot of energy and means and money, by the way, behind this topic in the middle of the crisis, thinking that it's better to prepare the future in the middle of the crisis to be stronger at the end. And this rebase of the business was absolutely key. And we did that for the A&P, we did that for the structural cost as well, because of course, for example, a country like India will go out of the recruitment freeze pretty quickly because it's a growing country for us. When, for example, I don't know, Spain is still at minus 25%, won't exceed this recruitment freeze. So being agile again is very important, but more importantly, we are rebasing our resource allocation, and all the budget process was and will be around the purpose-based budget to be sure that we are rebuilding the business for the future and not just mirroring what was done in the past. On the ways of working, we are preparing as well the future, thinking about how we can organize or reorganize our ways of working. Of course, remote work will stay. What is at stake is to find the right balance. And again, here, we will have different rules between the different countries within Pernod Ricard. One size doesn't fit all. And we are still working on it to see the right balance at the end of this crisis. But an interesting thing is what will be the office purpose after this crisis? And I take the example in France where we were moving our HQ in Paris in a different location, gathering all the French entities at the same place. And actually, we designed this building 3 years ago. And the idea was really to be full flex, which is pretty aggressive, including for Alexandre Ricard or myself. We don't have an office because we were believing that if you go to the office, it's to meet people, it's to connect with people, it's to have creativity because you are exchanging with people, more than to be in a closed office with a door and to work on your own. This maybe will be more a remote work for tomorrow. So the island, which is the name of the building in the center of Paris, is totally designed for that, was totally designed for that, and it's working super well in this crisis because it was really designed for people to be together. So of course, it's pretty empty for the time being, unfortunately, but we could see, for example, during summer, people wanting to connect and coming for that, and staying at home when they wanted to focus only on their own job. An important point as well was the upskilling. We wanted to accelerate during the crisis the upskilling of our population in 2 areas. First, all the programs of Pernod Ricard University were digitalized to be able to continue to upskill our population. And we were very aggressive in training our people because for some people at home, they couldn't work very heavily, I would say. When you have a sales guys who stay at home, of course, not obvious. And we overload them with trainings to be sure that they continue first to be really on the work focus, and as well to upskill themselves. And finally, on that topic, to prepare the future, we are focusing on our sustainability and responsibility roadmap as well. And we're accelerating some topics. And typically, we are taking in the our TNA policy for travelers as a carbon footprint, for example, thinking about that more. And we will travel in a different way after this crisis, for sure. So I don't want to be too long, but if I have something to really say here, what is really important, I think, it's don't waste the crisis. Don't waste the crisis. It's absolutely key. You can, and we accelerated our transformation thanks to this crisis. It's important because you can rebase your resources. It's important because you can rethink your ways of working. And it's very good as well for HR because the HR positioning during this crisis was absolutely key, supporting the business on the day-to-day, but as well bringing this long-term vision and really pushing the needle on this transformation and having the business prepared to go out this crisis. So design the playground and the rules to let the players play is absolutely key. Back to my words on freedom in a framework, we believe that we can really move forward with that. And one big trend, I think, before the crisis, but even more now in HR, is one size does not fit all. We were organizing HR in the 20 years ago with one system for almost everyone. And I do believe that the future is really more personalization, customization, and data will help us to do that. So just one word in conclusion is don't waste the crisis. Thank you very much for your attention. My best wishes for this conclave and to all of you. And thank you very much for your welcome.
Thank you, Cedric. Just a minute. We have a small video before you leave. Can you have the video, please?
Sure.
These moments, they make us one person. They give us joy. They give us happiness. They transcend the barriers of color, race, religion, gender, that makes us one.
Thank you, Cedric. Really appreciate you being with us today. Thanks for your time and setting a very, very strong tone to this conclave. This was really impressive and very useful for us. Thank you so much.
Sure, we can.
Thank you and bye-bye. Okay, so friends, now we move to the next topic of our conclave today. We move into the panel discussion with eminent CEOs, the most important one for the conclave. This is the panel we are talking about in new ways of leading and managing teams. In the new ways of working, mainly the hybrid model that we are talking, there seems to be a need to recalibrate leadership. Is there a need for leaders to change in the changed business world is a question. What are the new competencies and philosophical approaches a leader must possess in future to effectively manage the talent and teams? Which aspects of characteristics of current leadership will still be relevant in future? How should leaders balance the question of people, that is collaboration, managing diverse talent, influencing, and the other part is results, which is execution, accountability, resourcefulness, so on and so forth. Let's hear from the leaders themselves. We are very happy to have Easter Martinez, CEO and Editor-in-Chief of People Matters, as an expert moderator for this exclusive CEO panel, which comprises of Suresh Narayanan, Chairman and Managing Director, Nestle India, Ashwini Yardi, CEO, India and Chief Industrialization and Automation Officer, Capgemini, Alexis Telemark, Chairman and MD, Total Oil India Private Limited, and Francisca Decupier, Head of Territory India, BNP Paribas. Welcome all, and over to you, Esther.
Thank you. Thanks, Shrikant. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're joining us. Just give me a heads. Am I audible, Shrikant?
Very much, yes.
All right. Wonderful. Great. Thank you. Thanks so much. And a very warm welcome, Suresh, Alexis, Francisca, and Ashwini for this panel.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Great. So very quickly,
Hello.
Thank you. Thanks, Alexis. So I just quickly will set the context of our discussion and what we have prepared for all of you today. And I'm going to once again do a quick round of introductions. On many of the leaders in this panel don't need an introduction because you've had the opportunity to hear them. But just to get everyone on board, I'll also give you a little bit of very quick background on each one of them. And I can see we have a chat functionality, so it'll be great if you can also let us know where you're joining us from. So just your name and which city you're joining us from. It will bring a little bit of energy, and that's the beauty of doing these panels live. So we can have an interactive discussion with all of you who are listening from across India and maybe even outside of India as well. So what we plan for you today, as Shrikant was sharing in the context, is really one is identifying these business opportunities that we heard the previous speakers talk about, and we have 5 different industries in this panel. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on what's the silver lining, or what are some of the industry opportunities that the CEOs in this panel are seeing that we can capture, and not to waste a good crisis, as our previous panelists shared. The second thing we're going to cover is what does that mean if we have to keep our organization ready to capture those opportunities? What does that mean from human capital perspective? And then we will move into the leadership dimension as well, which is the core of this panel, about what are some of the leadership traits that we will have to shift to be able to really capture those business opportunities. So these are the 3 areas that we've planned for you. And again, inviting you to use the chat if you want to share a question or a suggestion or a dimension that you want to chat. We are all here really to serve you this afternoon. So Ashwini Yardi, CEO India, he's actually grown within the ranks at Capgemini, and he leads as well the industrialization and automation for Capgemini Group. Very warm welcome, Ashwini, to the panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther.
We have Alexis Temalke. He's the chairman, MD at Total Oil. He actually has been in India for 3 years, but he brings tremendous experience working across Asia and Africa, and of course, Europe. So welcome, Alexis, and look forward to your diverse thought as well.
Thank you very much. I've been here for 1.5 years only.
Oh, all right. All right. So it probably feels like 3 already. Wonderful. Thank you, Alexis, and welcome to the panel as well. We have joining Francisca Decupier. I think you have been here for 3 years, Francisca. She leads the head of territory for India at BNP, and she's also worked across functions, including HR, worked in sales, marketing, and leading businesses across. So it's a welcome, Francisca, as a panel. Pleasure to have you with us as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Suresh Narayan, Chairman, Managing Director, Nestle India, seasoned professional in consumer good industries, and he's handled various functions and also across different countries. Suresh, a very warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So I'm staying with you, Suresh, for the first round of very quick 2 to 3 minutes, one industry opportunity that has been accelerated because of the COVID situation that you think presents a silver lining for industries like consumer goods. If you were to choose one industry trend that it becomes an opportunity for your industry, what would that be?
Well, I think one of the things that certainly the pandemic has shifted is, at least for the time being, and I do hope that the sectors also recover, has been a clear shift from out-of-home consumption of brands to in-home consumption of brands. So I think the earlier speaker from Pernod Ricard has the impact of a large out-of-home business that gets quite badly affected. And today the shift is towards in-home brands. So in-home consumption of brands, and certainly in the sector that I represent, trustworthy and transparent and better nutrition and better immunity brands are really what the consumer is now seeking as he or she looks at the wellness of themselves and of their families. So I think the big trend towards better nutrition, better quality, and better immunity as essential features of consumer food products certainly I would say be a lasting dimension of the shift that the pandemic has brought.
Wonderful. Thank you, Suresh. And I'm going to come to you in the second round to double click on what does that mean from human capital capability and culture perspective in your organization. So Alexis, I'm coming to you specifically for your industry. What have you seen that one silver lining trend that is actually accelerated that becomes an opportunity?
Sure. First of all, maybe let me thank IFCCI for organizing this very important conclave. And thank you for inviting me to this panel. I think that clearly with the pandemic, 2020 has been a major year in terms of global consciousness of the planet's fragility. And we know that for decades we built a very global interconnected world which has been interconnected for the best, elevating billions of people out of poverty, but also sometimes interconnected for the worst with the climate change, biodiversity, and pandemic. So the world has changed dramatically, and we think there is no going back from there. There is only the way forward. And in terms of changes, of course, the digitalization, for example, that has clearly been accelerated due to the pandemic is changing the way we do our business, and it's also impacting our energy market. The development of work from home, reduction of travels also impact a lot the energy needs for transport, in addition to a shift to cleaner and sometimes shared mobilities. People, I think, realize that they could save time, money, and climate while being still efficient. So we see a lot of countries also now willing to accelerate even more into the energy transition. And India is clearly one of the best examples with a very ambitious target to develop natural gas and renewables. So this is clearly for us in Total as a broad energy company an opportunity to accelerate this transition that we started some years ago to a more low carbon world with, of course, still managing this challenge to be in a position at the same time to provide more energy because of the demography and all the social developments, but emitting less carbon and protecting the planet. So we have this very interesting mission, I would say, to at the same time meet growing energy demands and reducing carbon emissions.
Thank you. Thanks, Alexis. And again, I'm also going to come back to you on what does that mean from human capital strategy and from leadership perspective as well. And joining you, of course, in congratulating IFCCI in putting this program together, and especially this CEO panel. Sometimes I'm so stuck with time that I even forgot to congratulate the organizers and for giving us the opportunity to serve all of you. So Francisca, I'm coming to you. Again, you represent a very important industry in the region. And what would that be, that one trend that you would like to highlight that is accelerating because of COVID?
Yes, good afternoon also from my side, and happy to join in this panel. So if I have to choose one tendency that is really important for the banking, financial services sector in general, the choice that I would make would really be digitization. So digitization is a tendency that is going on for several years. It's for incumbent banks like ours who have many operations in many countries. It is really a challenge to reinvent ourselves and to implement that digitization. But it is thanks to all that preparatory work that we have been able to, during the crisis in the different countries, to be able, and in India it was really overnight, that our people have been continuing to work from home and being able to deliver all the services to all the types of clients as before. So it was like a live test that I think if you would have asked it before if it was possible, many people would have said no, it will not succeed, or we will have many interruptions or incidents. This was really not the case. So that's a big achievement and a big confirmation of all the preparatory work that has been done. And it creates opportunities for the future, because there will be a pre-COVID, like a pre-war period and a post-war period. I'm convinced that there will be a pre-COVID and a post-COVID period, and it will not be the same. So there will be new ways of working with much more flexibility that I'm sure of, and we can come back on that later. But that's like the internal translation of digitization, so the way we could internally continue our jobs and continue to service clients. But there was also towards the clients the fact that we were prepared to offer services for clients a bit in the anywhere, anyhow situation. So clients continue to have access to their bank accounts, to their financials, to their payments, but also to their loans, to new loans, to investments. All of that remained possible thanks to the digitization preparations. So just a little example, one of our activities in India is through ShareCan. ShareCan is a broker and an investment partner for clients. And they were in the midst of a project of delivering digital onboarding for new clients. And so they wanted to deliver that project in April. And well, okay, we were struck by the lockdown as of end of March. So, but it came all the more important to be able to deliver that to the Indian market, because as you know, the Indian markets did not do so good in March, but in April, they went up again, and many people wanted to have access to the market. So they wanted also to deliver that possibility to new clients, which they did. So it was a digital project that was delivered while being in lockdown. Now, what is the speeded up digitization with many, maybe there have not been that much new projects being delivered, but many more people that did not have access before now set the step, and they really started not only ordering food or ordering household material or clothing or shoes, but they also started payments online. They also started banking online. So many more people had access to that possibility. What is the opportunity? I think you can bring higher convenience to your clients. You bring flexibility in their lives. You have to bring it in a safe and in a convenient and in a very simple manner. So the tricky thing is that the user experience has really to be thought through in all details, because otherwise you end up in something that is cumbersome for clients, which cannot be the target. And I am also somebody who believes that digital is not only digital. The human aspect remains so important, but the opportunity is that the human interactions can be concentrated on key moments of truth in life. And as a banker, you can really discuss, because when it is about doing a payment, I think people are pretty autonomous. But when it is about asking for a loan, or when it is about a decision on investments or savings, even the younger generations confirm that they want to have somebody that can help them in making that important decision for them. And what is in it for the company? Well, I think we don't have to hide. There is also a cost efficiency part that goes along. So it becomes richer and more interesting in the interactions. And there is also a cost savings aspect, for which part of it, of course, should be returned to the clients in the end. So I expect for the future, after this transition year of 21, and it will start already now, and you feel it already, a lot more innovation and entrepreneurship. And so there are in every crisis positives and opportunities, and this is definitely one.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Franziska. And you have already opened the door as well to invite Ashwin to talk about the trend. And I think you'll probably double up on what Franziska said, because you've seen that at the end of in the center really of your industry. And because of time, Ashwin, if I may invite you to share the trend and also share, some of the leadership paradigm shifts that you need to see within your own organization to be able to service clients like the three of the industries represented in this panel. So if you may just share the industry trend and some of the leadership paradigms that you're seeing changing, then I'm going to come back to Suresh, Alexis, and Franziska as well on the leadership part. Please go ahead. I think you may be on mute, Ashwin. Just check. No, we can't hear you yet. Try now. Still, we can't hear you. If we can just request somebody from the IFCCI team, if they can support us. No? Ashwin, do you want to try again? No problem. No problem. See, that's some of the challenges we need to overcome together. So as we get that sorted, if I can request somebody from the IFCCI team to support Ashwin, I'm coming, Suresh, Alexis, and Franziska, to the three of you to say, considering we just have another 15 minutes before we sharply close, what are those leadership dimensions we'll have to really change? So Suresh, you spoke about safety and wellness and the simplicity of consumers really looking for products which are more aligned to what their concerns are at the moment. Alexis, you again spoke about customers at the center of their changes of lifestyle and the implication of what they expect from organizations like yourself. And Franziska, again, you spoke about customers and how they want convenience, but at the same time, they want the human touch for some of the very important decisions. So Suresh, what are the dimensions on leadership that need to change for the organization to be agile enough to capture those opportunities? So I'll come to the three of you and we'll hope to get Ashwin in the conversation. Suresh, over to you.
Look, I think, one of the things that is typical of this pandemic has been the fact that it didn't come with a calling card. We didn't know what we were in for, and nobody, no soothsayer, no doctor, no economist, no political leader could predict the kind of devastation that it would leave us in. So I think this is one of those pivotal moments for mankind to really look at its entire leadership model. So irrespective of the business in which you are in, for the first time, I think in many, many years, the word compassion and empathy entered the dictionary of leadership in a very strong way. And the second big theme, even if we add compassionate and empathetic leaders, I think one of the traits that has been very much subdued in the pre-COVID era is the attribute of empowerment. Empowerment has never been an important theme in many organizations because it's always believed that the leader knows all, and micromanaging and indeed ensuring that all key decisions are taken by the hierarchy, and depending on where you sit on the totem pole, you take bigger decisions. So empowerment has now been I mean, the fact is that whether you run an organization of 10 people or you run an organization of 1 million people, you are forced to empower the people to take the right decisions at the right levels in the organization. I think the gentleman from Pernod Ricard, who spoke earlier, also talked about it. The fact of the matter is that empowerment has become a central theme of leadership. I welcome that because I think it's an important theme. And there are 2 or 3 things that become very important for it to happen in the organization. I call it the 4 E's. The first one is enablement. Empowerment will not happen if enablement doesn't happen. And for enablement, I think 2 things have to happen. The leadership has to be empathetic and conscious of the role that they are doing in enabling their people. And number 2, the old aspects of coaching, which was done fashionably by us, having coaches for a small period of time to try and give a bump up to somebody whom we thought needed that help, now will become an intrinsic part of the regular role of a manager. I think as has been defined by John Cotter, the Harvard professor, the fundamental difference between a manager and a leader is that a manager manages the moment, the leader manages change. And I think that's when the manager has to transform into a leader for enablement. Second is energy. I think the energy of transformation is going to be extremely important. Organizations are feeling tired, are feeling under the weather. It is not easy to run an enterprise, and I'm sure my 3 other panelists would share this thought. Has been run like this, but it's not likely to continue. We are a people company. Ultimately, cultures are built by stories, by human interactions, and by anecdotes. They're not built by Zoom calls and built by MS Teams calls. That's not the way in which you build organizations. So I think energy, managing the energy would be important. The third is environment and culture. By environment, I think Francisca talked about it. We are in a hyper digital age now. All that we thought would take 2 years has been done in 2 months. I was reading somewhere that the digital connectivity, or let's say the e-commerce connectivity in the US, what took 12 years has taken less than 12 weeks to happen. Yeah. So there is a massive collapsing of the timeline on digital. So organizations have to increasingly manage the digital space and their own work from home and work from office. And of course, set the culture. See, culture is still, in my belief, more important than CapEx in many organizations. We invest a lot in CapEx. We invest less in culture. And in difficult times, you realize how empty your culture is. Because culture is that unspoken language that people move by without getting instructions. And we have been a hyper micromanaging environment. So instructions have always been given from time to time. This is the time when culture is important. And the last point is the E is evolution, which is organizations today have different generations. They have strong millennials, they have Generation Z, they have got baby boomers, a few of them left, and they have got, of course, the other middle generation that is there. How do you manage these 4 generations in the context of the objectives that are sharply defined and in the context of business that has been completely re-navigated and recalibrated is the challenge. So really, empowerment is the core theme. Enablement, energy, environment, and evolution are the key elements.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm going to invite Ashwin to stay with the leadership team, with your permission, because we have to make sure we hear Alexis and Francisca as well. So Ashwin, Suresh talked about empowerment as a core element to really capture that opportunity, and he gave the model of the 4 E's. How do you see the leadership at Capgemini evolving? What is your desire to see that culture shift toward new leadership style? What would that be, in your view? Unfortunately, we still can't hear you, Ashwin. I think today we are somehow facing that challenge with your device. Really sorry, we can't hear you, Ashwin. All right. It happens. It happens sometimes, and I'm sure he'll be feeling equally as bad as we are feeling that we can't hear him. Alexis, you want to give us your additional points on Suresh's point on, he talked about empowerment, compassion, and empathy. We'd love to hear how you see the leadership shifts in your own organization.
Yes, I fully agree with what Suresh mentioned, and we should not forget that when you have so many changes in your environment and the need to adapt, let's be clear that most of the time the managers are the ones who are blocking a bit the system to accept the change, because it's changing their own habits and their organization. So it requires a lot of interactions also with the management to make sure they are ready to face those changes. I think something very important, and that is changing also the way we are managing, is that we realized during the past month that we had never been so far physically from each other, and at the same time never been so close from each other through digital tools. I also agree that we cannot run a company on the long term. I don't think we can just satisfy ourselves with these tools, but we are quite happy and we are lucky they were ready for this pandemic. So clearly the interactions have changed. I mean, it's no more the same direct interaction with the people sitting in office you will meet every day. And at the same time, you have some people on the field that you will meet once in a while. Yeah. We see that also with people being physically far from each other, there are more and more, I think, expectations for information, to share a vision, to share objective, to really feel that even if you are physically far from office, you are still part of the company. You're still part, I would say, of the family. So managers have to adapt, of course, to these new ways of working. We have in total we have launched our new extended workplace policy to give more flexibility. And for the managers, we've developed a program which is aimed to develop the dimension of manager coach. And this is something that is now becoming so important that it's also in each manager has objectives on this dimension that will be appraised on a yearly basis together with the business objectives. So we're trying to help them to be more attentive, to develop listening skills, to be capable, of course, to grow their team members, to learn how to give and receive feedback. And there's a specific training path that is developed for our manager to support them in this dimension of manager coach.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Alexis. And I really, loved the comment on we've never been so far, but we've never been so close. And the role of that manager coach to build that relatedness.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Ashwin, but we can't see you, but we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right. So, Ashwin, we are now in the last question, which is, I want to invite all of you to, and I'm coming to you, Francisca, as well, but I'll request Ashwin to go first. Our audience today is composed by mostly HR leaders in organizations of different sizes, and they need to take that leadership shift agenda back to their organizations. And you spoke about some of the things that we need from the people managers in terms of new behaviors that they need to display. So Ashwin, what will be your one word of advice, one thing that you will want the HR community that is listening to us to start doing to support that leadership shift? One thing to start, one thing to stop. And I'm coming to you, Francisca, after Ashwin. One thing to start, one thing to stop, to help the organization accelerate that leadership shift.
So one thing to start really is trust. I give just quick our example. All our 100,000 employees work in office, and we always track how much time they spend in office and how much do they produce. When they are working from home, no way I can track it. So the most important thing for us was to trust them and just see what they produce. So I would say one most important thing is that we should really build our trust quotient significantly higher than what we had ever built. And the one thing that I would really ask people to stop is really stop micromanaging your teams. Help them with the purpose of what they were supposed to achieve, and then build the trust so you don't have to micromanage them, and they will deliver the results. And that's what we saw over last now 1 year. 95% of our headcount works from home, and we produce even more than what we produced when they were in office. So that's a clear demonstration of trusting and not micromanaging is beneficial to the business.
Thank you, Ashwin. And I'm so glad we could bring you back for these two big pieces of advice. I think this is, really, really awesome. So thank you for sharing. Francisca, one thing to start, one thing to stop. We have 1 minute each before we close.
Okay. Because I was checking my whole list of, and I was saying what
I know you had so many other things to share with us.
To start, then I can pick last one in my list that I still had there.
Just one.
I think leadership needs to really stimulate very, very strongly is that collaborative working, because the world is complex. Every solution that has to be found is multidimensional. And we have to get out of the silos, and it is management that has to get along with each other to get together out of the silos, put their people together in those empowered multidisciplinary teams. I love personally a lot the human-centered design thinking methodologies, because I have teams seen working with those tools. Yeah. It is customer-oriented. Employees feel very happy to be able to work efficiently and to come to things that they can put bits and pieces into the market, try it out with clients. So I think that collaborative working is really what we need to put in place and stimulate very much.
And stop. One thing to stop.
Something to stop.
One thing to stop.
Micromanagement, because I believe also that micromanagement is a killer. So I want to reconfirm that it is really something we should stop doing. Our employees are engaged. They have been proving that they deserve our trust.
Thank you, Francisca. Alexis, one thing to start, one thing to stop.
Well, I will not be very different from the other panelists. I think clearly I fully agree on the micromanagement, which, by the way, is not possible anymore. And I'm sure this. The way we've been forced to work has shown to people who are reluctant to trusting their people that it was possible. And definitely, I think we need to help probably more the manager than their team members. The young generation is so, has no problem to work from home, to work digitally from everywhere. It may be a bit more difficult for their elders. So these are the ones we need to support. But I fully agree on the trust issue and the micromanagement we need to stop.
Thank you. Thanks, Alexis. Suresh, final closing remarks on one thing to start, one thing to stop for our community today.
Well, I think the first is what you should start is to inspire yourself and your team, because that's what you're paid to be as a leader. You're not paid to just sit there in your chair and look at the world. So start inspiring yourself and start inspiring your team. And stop overconfidence, and also stop humility, or stop arrogance and start humility. Because I think I think that's the other thing, that overconfidence has led us to a path of doom as we see. And I think arrogance has also contributed strongly to it. So start inspiring and stop overconfidence and arrogance.
Thank you. Thank you, Suresh. And we are just 1 minute above time, and I committed to all of you that we'll finish sharp on time, and our organizing team as well. But very, very inspiring closing from all of you, and a fantastic context from business and leadership. So thank you so much, Suresh, Alexis, Francisca, and Ashwin for a fantastic panel. Really, really thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Esther. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Esther, for bringing out the best from this discussion. This was amazing and a very good momentum it gives to the conclave. I would also like to thank Suresh, Ashwin, Alexis, and Francisca for their time and wisdom sharing. It's really inspiring and coming from the horse's mouth. I think these are the guidelines and guiding lights that we look forward to when we talk to the CEOs. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. So friends, now we move to the next part of this conclave, and I hope all of you are engaged and enjoying this. Now we have an interesting talk by Mani Ganeshan, who is the APAC Engineering Head and Center Head of Amadeus Labs, Bangalore. Mani, as the R&D Head of APAC region, his main responsibility is to implement the Amadeus Global R&D footprint strategy in the region to better synergize between the business units, R&D, and regional commercial teams, which is a real leadership role. Under his visionary leadership, Amadeus has seen meteoric growth in a short span and received various industry accolades for the same. His organization has been ranked 5th Times Ascent Dream Companies to Work For in 2018. Great Place to Work certified 3 years in a row, and has been identified among the best places to work in India in the ITES BPM industry 2 years in a row. Before joining Amadeus, Mani worked for several multinational organizations like Nest Technologies and Accenture in Bangalore, Wells Fargo Bank and MCI Telecommunications in USA, and ATOS Origin in Mumbai. Mani holds an MBA in Executive Management from Colorado Technical University, USA, and an MCA from the University of Pune, India. He has worked in international multicultural environments, having spent 11 years in USA and a couple of years in Europe before that. Mani will be addressing us on the topic of From Crisis Comes Opportunity, the opportunity to better engage, enable, and excel together. Welcome, Mani, and over to you.
All right. Thank you, Shrikant. Thanks for that detailed introduction. Really honored. Thanks to IFCCI for giving me the opportunity to present the Amadeus story. Are the participants able to see my screen, the presentation that I have?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. All right. And I assume people can hear me clearly too. Okay. All right. So again, I'll get going. Let me first thank IFCCI and then start presenting interesting story to our participants. The story of the travel industry, the story of a booming industry that hit a little bit of a roadblock, and how the industry is evolving and trying to come out of crisis and the evolutions that is happening. Okay. I'll start with a brief introduction about Amadeus. Amadeus, we are a software organization. We are the largest technology provider in the travel industry. It's a publicly listed company in the Spanish Stock Exchange. Generally, all segments of travel, Amadeus has some solution for it. If you generally, when you talk about Amadeus, you talk about large numbers. We deal with more than 1.9 billion passengers that are using the Amadeus system in some way to travel from country to country, city to city, and so on. And we are also the largest travel agency network booking platform for the industry, and we diversify into many areas in the travel space. We are globally spread around 190 countries with around 17,000 employees worldwide. And Bangalore is an engineering center. We are the second largest engineering center for Amadeus, with more than 2,200 employees innovating on Amadeus solutions. So that's a brief about Amadeus. So where was the travel industry? Let me take you back to the start of 2020, right? So this was an industry that was quite healthy. There were many airlines that were reporting results that were in the green. They were coming to show profit. The passenger traffic was growing. And these are some numbers that goes to show that what was 4 billion passengers was expected to grow in the next 15 years to around 8 billion. And we were steadily seeing the passenger traffic grow. What that meant was there were more and more world citizens who were coming out, traveling for business, traveling for leisure. And generally, this was a healthy industry, right? So this is the backdrop of how the industry was in 2020. And then something small happened in the first quarter of 2020. If you don't know what it was, you've been living in a cave for the last 15 months now. So we had a small virus which put the world to a standstill. And in particular, it put travel to a complete standstill, right? So sometime in Q1 is when the lockdown started happening. Countries started closing their borders. All flights across the world, across the globe were grounded. And there was massive disruption. Some data to illustrate what I'm talking about. You see these graphs. The pandemic hit and almost travel came to a complete standstill. You see air passenger volumes, which was quite healthy, almost came to zero. You see the Amadeus quarterly results, and this is from our annual results. The Amadeus revenue model was a pay-as-you-go or a transaction-based model. And almost in the 32 years of our history, we were always growing, always successful, because as I told you earlier, travel was growing in the world, right? And yes, travel in general has seen some disruptions in the past when the SARS pandemic happened, or when the Ebola came in, 9/11 happened. In each of these disruptions, travel saw disruption, but we as a travel technology provider and a travel platform was insulated because these pandemics were impacting one region of the world, and we were geographically spread in all regions, right? So we were quite insulated, feeling quite comfortable about ourselves. When the corona pandemic came, pretty much travel stopped in the entire world, and a revenue model that was looking really rosy for us, because we were getting into long-term contracts with our customers. 10-year contracts is what we would get into at the start of every year. Unlike other companies who used to look at their sales pipeline and see, okay, how is the revenue going to come for this year? For us, a lot of our revenue was already assured because travel used to keep happening and customers had long-term contracts with us. So we were fairly secure. And then you can see all the numbers started going south. And from millions of bookings processed per day, we started processing millions of cancellations per day, which again, we were not used to, because we started seeing some cancellations, and then eventually it came to, we are seeing more cancellations than booking. And after a while, it was only cancellations that were coming in the Amadeus platform. So it was quite disturbing for us as a company that suddenly everything starts going into the red and deep red, right? So this is how the industry got impacted and how Amadeus as a company got impacted. How did we react, right? The first thing we said is we need to engage with our customers, because our customers, I mean, we are a B2B player, and our customers are the airlines, the hotel chains, the cruise companies, and so on. They obviously were hurting a lot more than us, and we had to support them in this time of need. We saw interesting situations with our customers. Some of them were telling us, we don't have the OPEX anymore, we don't have the CAPEX, let's stop projects, right? Let's slow it down and let's pick this up when the industry recovers, let's go cold for a year, right? Whereas some others said, this is a great opportunity because we control the heart of an airline's operations. They said, okay, we have a lull now in our traffic, great opportunity to speed up on many things. And so while we started seeing a slowdown in some areas, we started seeing rapid acceleration with some of our customers saying, let's go into the airports and start installing new systems so that we get to test these systems in a lull period. So we had to quickly adapt to our customer needs. So that was the first step that we had to take. Then, of course, travelers started getting disrupted heavily, and they started worrying about the testing, the cure for the coronavirus, what's going to happen across borders. I have to travel from, let's say, India to the US. Is the US borders closed? Is India going to let me fly out? Can I fly back into the country if I fly out for a vacation or a business trip? What are the government regulations? What are the regulations at that particular airport? Travelers had many of these kind of open questions, and being a technology provider, we started engaging with travelers through our providers and started providing enhanced communication on the dynamic rules. The concept of bubble flights came in between countries. I mean, these are things which we had never heard of in our lifetime, but countries started getting into agreements of bubble flights between them, saying, okay, if you're coming from India, you can enter the US, but if you're coming from some other country, you cannot, because we don't have a bubble arrangement with this country, right? Australia and New Zealand got into a similar agreement. So there were a lot of government rules, inter-country agreements that we had to deal with. Flight schedules were very dynamic. They were changing so rapidly that we were struggling to keep up to speed on all the changes that were coming in. And we took the accountability to provide that visibility to our travelers. And last but not the least, we had to keep our employees engaged, because very soon they all went virtual. They all went back home to their hometowns in India, Chandigarh, Raichur, Delhi, and they were all over the country. In our other cities and where Amadeus is present, they all started working from home. So we had to quickly adapt our HR practices, our people and culture practices, to make sure that we engage with our employees and do not leave them alone, where in the rapidly changing dynamics of our customers and travelers, our employees should feel engaged with the company. So we took a lot of initiatives around that. Then we said, how do we enable our employees so that they can serve our customers better? Some examples of that. The first thing that we did was we rapidly changed our entire learning system that we had in the company to virtual. There was no option to conduct classroom trainings, and we were primarily a company which used to use classrooms as the primary mode of learning for our employees. Very quickly, we translated that entire thing to virtual. We innovated quite actively, created e-learning courses. Initiative that we ran was Learning Wednesdays, which was quite interesting, because every Wednesday we said, let's put some learning in front of our employees. And we didn't realize, but within 3 to 4 weeks, our employees were looking for Wednesdays, for Wednesday to come, so that what is the L&D department going to put out this Wednesday? I mean, it was around performance management, it was around engaging with employees, it was around how do you take care of your health, and in a situation where everyone's remote, where you're not seeing each other. So there are many initiatives that we took around learning, right? One thing that we're particularly proud of is the virtual tech summit that we held. We started small, saying, let's connect some industry leading technology players, and run a virtual summit for our employees. And by the time we conducted it and finished it, it went across 21 sites of Amadeus. More than 3,000 people participated in it. So it really took off as a virtual summit. Right? We had to, of course, automate. while we were engaging with our employees, we continued our hiring initiatives. So we were onboarding employees repeatedly, month on month, and we did have to make sure that all the onboarding process is now online, right? So that's the next step that we had to take, which is completely onboarding, onboard our employees. The last one was quite complex for us because on a yearly basis, we hire around 150 young engineers, and we had 150 young engineers who were going through their internship when the lockdown happened. And we had 150 young engineers who were going to come on board in the July timeframe. And we run a 3-month classroom training with them. The entire onboarding and training was completely conducted virtual, and all the young engineers could connect to the Amadeus platform for enablement from their homes all across the country. So several innovations in the enabled space. And last but not the least, we said, okay, now how do we excel? And here's where the industry evolution started coming in, and we started contributing to that. So the main evolution that is coming in now in the industry is around the concept of safe travel, right? So every passengers or world citizens have an inherent need to come out and start traveling, but their biggest concern is are the airports safe? Are the aircraft safe? Are the destination, the tourist spots safe? So how do I know that I will not have to quarantine if I am going through a vaccination, right? So the entire industry is working on this new concept called safe travel, and being a large technology provider in the industry, we are leading it for this industry. And what does safe travel entail? It is bringing various important players together, bringing the industry with the governments, with the travelers, and connecting that entire ecosystem. This is what we are working on now, and it's a rapid innovation. There is a concept coming in around the health passport, where different airlines have already started picking it up, saying, if you demonstrate to us that you're vaccinated, you get a health passport, and that health passport gives you a better access into the airports, into the tourist destinations, into the airlines, hotels, and so on. So we are trying to bring the entire industry and all stages of travel together into the safe travel ecosystem. Right now, you can see that this is a transformation that the entire industry is going through in rapid fashion. To put things in perspective, most of you, if you were around 20 years back, you would have seen these paper tickets that were around, which you used to get when you book a ticket. The travel agency would give you a paper ticket. And at some point, the industry and IATA took a decision, we will get rid of paper tickets and move to e-tickets, right? While it seems simple enough, and me and you as traveler have got this e-ticket for us, I can tell you for the industry, this was at least a 15-year journey to go from getting rid of completely paper tickets to completely e-tickets. That entire journey took 15 years. And now, of course, we don't have 15 years to put a safe travel ecosystem in front of travelers and the governments and the industry. We are probably looking to do this in 15 months, right? So that's the rapid innovation that we are seeing in the industry today. And I will move on a little. So as I said, we are in the process of connecting the various ecosystem together. And last but not the least, we are now looking to the future. And even in crisis, there are some magnificent innovations that are coming in the industry. The first one is what's happening in the transatlantic routes. So these are routes between Europe and US. Historically, for the last 30, 40, 50 years, all the airlines flying from Europe to US have followed a set path, right? And it's governed by governments, and airlines do not have the flexibility to choose their own route between Europe and US. The pandemic and the necessity to innovate is causing the industry to innovate. And now there is a pilot running where airlines are free to choose their own routes. And this is an experimentation that is going on. And we will see how this goes. And this is bringing almost around 20% efficiency in the industry. So you can see how a disruption is causing some opportunities where for 20 or maybe 30, 40 years, we have not looked to change the transatlantic routes. And now we are trying to do that in short time frame and gain efficiencies. The other one is how the aircrafts are innovating. Now here, we are seeing how the inside an aircraft, it can be safe, and there are companies that are innovating on this. And it's a good concept of origami, where we are seeing how we can plug and play the middle seat so that the middle seat can provide a safe environment for the aisle and the window seat. Now, for those who have traveled, you know, the aircrafts have been like this for decades, right? And now there are innovations coming in within the aircraft itself, right? You'll see more of this in the industry. The industry is evolving rapidly so that we can create a safe environment for world citizens to come out and start traveling again, because travel, of course, is an inherent need for everyone. So this is the story. This is what the industry is going through. This is what Amadeus is powering for the travel industry. And hopefully I gave you a little bit of perspective on how even a crisis creates opportunities. Thank you. And back to you, Srikanth. Srikanth, you're on mute.
Where or why or why. What matters is who, their desires, aspirations, needs. For more than 30 years, For more than 30 years, we've been connecting travelers to their journeys, observing and anticipating what matters to us all, innovating and making real what once was a dream. At Amadeus, we develop trusted technology that puts the traveler first and that powers your business. Together, we build better journeys for billions of people. Amadeus, seeing the journey through the traveler's eyes.
Srikanth, again, we tried to play a video, maybe it didn't play well on Amadeus and how we are transforming the industry. I will let IFCCI organizers maybe play it in the next break or at a more opportune time. I will hand this back to you, Srikanth. Hello.
Srikanth or Sapna, can you hear us?
Hello. Yes, Niruban, can you hear me? Srikanth, can you hear us? I think there is a problem with muting. So I think we can move on to the next panel, and the panel discussion is on diversity and inclusion. And I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce Niruban, who's going to be our moderator for today. So Niruban is heading BNP Paribas, the human resource function at BNP Paribas GSO. And Niruban was a global HR partner for BNP Paribas Securities in Paris. He is the co-lead for diversity and inclusion for BNP Paribas in India. He is also a chartered member of the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, London. Niruban is also the vice chairman of the IFCCI HR committee. I will now pass over to Niruban. Niruban, would you like to do an introduction of all the panelists very quickly?
Yes, I can do that. So let me do that quickly. Thank you, Sapna, for introducing all of us. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Great. Superb. Thank you so much, Sapna, for introducing me. So I'll quickly start with Lani Montoya. So Lani Montoya is the Director and Global Talent Management for Diversity and Inclusion at Pernod Ricard Group. She's based in Paris. Lani is a leadership executive with experience in coaching, leadership development, human resource, and D&I. She has over than 20 years of experience in the business world, and she has held different regional roles and global roles in the US and France. So welcome on board, Lani, with us, and you are the first panelist. We have Sarah Echeverry. So Sarah is basically the HR head for the Asia Pacific, Middle East, Africa, South America for Legrand. She's a graduate from the French business school Neoma, and she has a master's degree from ENSAM. She started her career at PwC, and she is now with Legrand. I would like then to introduce Jay Shet. Jay Shet is the head of APAC CIB ITO, and he's also the CIB Deputy COO for BNP Paribas in Hong Kong. Jay Shet basically joined BNP Paribas in 2012 as the head of India Solutions, basically, which is a captive entity of the group in India. He's providing IT, operations, and finance to more than 30 countries in the group. Prior to that, Jay Shet used to work in Morgan Stanley for more than 7 years, where he led the captive entity over there. Originally from Mumbai, Jay now lives in Hong Kong with his family and his daughter. Outside work, he enjoys, many things related to arts. I know Jay personally, so it's our pleasure to have him here. And the final panelist that we have is Adirupa Sengupta. Adirupa Sengupta is the Group Chief Executive for Common Purpose, which is a charitable trust. We have also worked with Adirupa in the past in BNP Paribas as a group. She's been working in the space of leadership development for the past 20 years. She has a passion for developing talent and connecting people. Adirupa is leading, Common Purpose from January 2019. Adirupa has been also with Common Purpose from 2001. And basically, she has worked with major organizations and institutions such as General Electric, BNP Paribas, the ASEAN Foundation, the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. And recently, we have worked with Adirupa on different leadership inclusive program for us. So we hope that with this excellent panel that we have on board, we'll be able to touch upon the different topics that we have defined for you today. In terms of how the panel will be organized, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us, over the chat box. And as we go, we'll be asking the different questions to our panelists. We heard a lot about renewed emphasis on inclusive workplaces, and I'm sure you've all seen that the organization can no longer remain silent on social issues as we observed last summer. Employees have more and more expectation on the organization to act upon issues around inequality. Employees want the organization to make their culture more and more inclusive. Companies on their side are reshifting their D&I strategies. They are moving from the true authentic self. I think this is the new shift that is taking place. And the paradigm and the new business case for that is to say, if people are bringing their authentic self to work, then it leads to better employee engagement and lead to better productivity and therefore better retention. So there's a real business case for that. Adirupa, without wasting any more time, you have worked with many large corporates. What are the diversity and inclusion programs that really work? What are the key organizational traits required to ensure that D&I is embedded into the culture and is impactful?
Thank you so much for that question, Niru, and thank you to you and the organizers for inviting me into this conversation. It's a real pleasure to be on this panel with Sarah, Jay, and Lani. Jay, I remember you from one of the programs that we ran for BNP Paribas a couple of months ago when Niru was on it as well. So great to be reconnected. Very conscious of time, Niru. I think I would love to take up the whole time to answer that question, but of course I won't. I think you've kind of answered the first question in the way you framed the second. And you would expect me to say this, I think the big thing that really works in the context of embedding is culture. For me, and I've seen this across the world. I've had the privilege through Common Purpose, which is an international leadership development organization. We work all over the world, Asia, Africa, Europe, US, etc. That no matter how good the policies and practices are in an organization, it does not work unless you also make an effort to create the right culture. So to me, the culture is absolutely critical, because in a way, if you look at diversity and inclusion more broadly, what is it? It really is a journey. Like you yourself said, gone are those days when it's all about noting down different diversity metrics, isn't it? It's not about statistics and data anymore. It's absolutely the things that you talked about, that sense of belonging, that emotional connect to institutions and organizations. And it's really about capturing how people are feeling. The work that we've been doing, we notice that often there are different kinds of boundaries that divide people in organizations. Some of the boundaries are very visible, like gender, people's nationality, color of skin, what people look like, etc. But the things that really divide people and which become very important in the context of diversity and inclusion are things like values, people's beliefs, people's faith. And I don't mean faith as in religion. What do they believe in? What do they not believe in? People's background. These often in the current climate, particularly in the last 10 months or 11 months or 12 months that we've all been going through together, have become or are becoming the real dividers. And often these can't be seen. They're invisible to the eye. And that's why organizations have got to work very hard to build that culture so that people can cross these kinds of boundaries, which are not very visible and which are not going to get corrected only through policies and practices and metrics and data. So therefore, very quickly picking up your second question, what are some of the organizational traits that really matter and help build that inclusive culture? I'm going to list 6. And I'm doing this not because I think these are the most important 6 and these are the only ones that matter. I'm listing these 6 because these are the ones that we have picked up in our work with different corporates across the world, including corporates that we work with in India. So these really are agility, empathy, ability to influence, particularly internal stakeholders. This is where often cultures fall down in organizations because people don't feel like they can influence. They don't have the bandwidth. They're not empowered enough. Being purposeful, open, and self-aware. Now, I think these 6 traits, go a long way towards building the right culture for diversity and inclusion to really kind of embed itself and take shape. I'm very happy to go into the details of all 6, but I'm very conscious of time, Niru. So I'm happy to leave it at that and pick it up, if there's interest for me to go beyond this. But the answer to your question is culture. And, if organizations focus on the right competencies, particularly linked to leadership, and leadership has such a big role towards building culture, then I think we are talking about really embedding diversity and inclusion in organizations. And I'll stop at that for now.
Thank you so much, Adi. I know how complex this is for you, who is a specialist of D&I, to summarize it like that. I think what I retain is that some of the main traits is around agility, ability to influence, and being purposeful. Moving to you, Lani, you have held global roles, as I said earlier on, in the US and France for Pernod Ricard. Do you share Adi's view? And can you tell us what are the practices specifically on gender diversity that you have developed at Pernod Ricard?
Yes, so first of all, let me start by, again, as Adirupa said, really thanking all of you for inviting me to be as part of this panel. And I have the great pleasure to share and meet all of you for the first time. So it's really a good experience for me. And I very much agree with what Adirupa has mentioned. In fact, we believe a lot in culture, and we're moving into working much more around inclusion as part of that within Pernod Ricard, as well as the leadership model. So we are aware that our leadership model and the leadership that we show within the organization is key to having really a sustainable and inclusive culture. So I fully agree with what you have said, Adi. So in terms of programs, as you call them, which are specific, positive, and purposefully D&I-oriented actions, we have put in place things like the D&I awareness workshops, where we rolled it out across the organization, really starting to build awareness of this topic with our top leadership, but all through the organization. We brought in unconscious bias trainings. We've had participation in specialized forums like the Women's Forum. And then on gender, having women's groups or networks, making sure that D&I really features strongly in our sustainable and responsibility platform. These activities really make D&I identifiable and visible inside and outside the organization. And this will push people to start thinking of it and think about it differently. To me, this is most important. It's the tip of the iceberg at Pernod Ricard, and we have had initiatives in all the areas that I've mentioned. More underground activities, so sometimes less visible, but that really do anchor D&I deep in the organization and over time make it part of the corporate culture, as Adi was saying, because they impact on day-to-day managerial practices. So what I'm talking about, for example, are things around looking at key processes within the organization, like our recruitment, our performance management process, the way that we assess talents, the way that we manage careers within the organization, compensation, to make sure that they are fair and as to create equity. So looking at how we organize participation in programs, for example, where we over-index on women to make sure that we are really bringing them along at a faster rate. To make them balanced, also checking the definitions and the contents of our leadership model, because we know that many of the things that Adi mentioned are critical in terms of building this culture that really embraces differences. And finally, looking at data to track our progress is also critical. Providing incentives to management for promoting D&I. So I would add that top management has to be a key component of and prerequisite in all of this work. We're fortunate at Pernod Ricard that our CEO and our leadership team are fully committed to D&I. To share some additional examples, we have redefined our HR strategy with D&I being top of mind across everything that we're doing. We've reshaped our leadership attributes, so 50% of our competencies in our model are linked to D&I. We've introduced development assessment centers, which covers not only a biased selection of participants, but all people in the different levels of the organization. We've developed mentoring. We're offering coaching more extensively. And I think we're all going to see learnings from this COVID crisis. We've already started to see it, in the area of flexibility, with the realization that a good balance between working from home and the office can be a win-win for the organization, for the employees, and particularly for women. So 2 examples that we have at Pernod Ricard. Since 2016, we launched a global mentoring program where we had mentors at the XCOM and the XCOM -1 level. And we were very careful in selecting the participants, which particularly came to representing our fantastic diversity within the group, mainly focusing on gender, but also diversity in terms of other areas, and making sure that our mentors would be paired with mentees they didn't know. So the results really went beyond what we were hoping for. We got the expected benefits for the mentees, but we also observed a systematic reverse mentoring, which was an eye-opening experience for the mentors who, for the first time in some cases, realized the reality of the challenge of career progression for certain people. And secondly, the value of getting to know people outside of their usual network. So as a result, we've also seen instances of real sponsorship forming in an informal way, developing and helping mentees to grow their career within the organization. Inclusion is all about our individual and collective ability to open up to differences. And so within the organization, we are really finding ways to do this. So the rest was easy because Studies have shown that diversity generates better performance and a better environment in which people can work and live together. And that's core to Pernod Ricard because it really lends itself to what's core to our DNA, which is conviviality. And then in recent years in India, which is one of our top 4 markets, we have made it possible for more and more women to be part of leadership teams in the bottling facilities. And in doing so, we have created benefits for these women in terms of overall influence in and outside of the business, to their team members, being exposed to different management styles, their families, their communities, through the new status that they have acquired, as a simple acknowledgement that their abilities are equal to those of men. So this is a very interesting combination of both visible and underground activities that lead to this result. And by the way, we saw great improvement in the productivity levels in those bottling halls.
Superb. Thank you so much, Lani, for this very good insight, giving us global perspectives, but also how this was done at an India level. I think what I really liked is also on this whole piece about, KPI, to say that actually if you don't measure it, you actually can't manage it at all. And to influence your senior stakeholders, which are more number driven, to have them embark, this is a key piece, and I like how you have started it, and thank you for sharing these different practices. Sarah, moving to you on the same question, okay, and you have a regional perspective also across APAC, leading Le Grand HR. Regarding gender, similar to Lani, and we really would like to see what are the practices across the industry, what are the practices that you have developed at Le Grand? And how did you embark? Because I can see that Adi spoke about it, Lani spoke about it also. How did you embark your senior managers? And specifically, Lani was mentioning about on-the-ground practices, about line managers, and especially to avoid the perception of force-fitting. Because at many times when it comes about gender, there is a perception widespread across many managers and many people that are we trying to force fit, or are we really doing it, in a purposeful manner, as Adi mentioned. What are your perspective on that, Sarah?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this conclave. Well, for those who don't know Le Grand, we are a French company. And we have around 35,000 people spread in 90 countries. And India is one of our top 5 countries as well. So in terms of gender diversity, we have developed some good practices also. And it's true that how do we implement the good practices? We have clear guidelines coming from the top management, and I think that's the key factor. So Lena was talking about that, but we really agree on that. To give you an example, in Le Grand, so of course we have a diversity and inclusion policy coming from the group, which is very clear and known by everyone within the companies. And we also try to lead by example, because our board of directors is managed by a woman since 2020, last year, July 2020, and is composed of 45% of women. And it's true that our chief executive officer is fully committed to foster gender diversity, and I think it's really really important. So to us, what does it mean finally to be fully committed? We have public objectives which are very clear and known by everyone, and we have 9 years now to be 50-50 in our total workforce. And today we have 36% of women in our total workforce, and the public objective is to be 50-50 in 9 years. So you are talking, Nero, about KPI, so it can be hard to manage and not easy to manage, but we have several meetings. We have the annual budget meeting. We have quarterly executive meeting where our general managers are presenting their results regarding the evolution of gender diversity, and they are presenting their actions. Another KPI that we are following is that in our bonus scheme, in the general manager's bonus scheme, they have an indicator on the evolution of gender. And it's true that so everyone is moving on the same directions. And if I can add something else regarding the KPIs as well, we have implemented what we have called the gender mapping, which is to try to identify all the management positions that can be feminized at group level. When can that happen, and how can that happen, either by external recruitment or internal recruitment? And we are trying to manage that on a quarterly basis. So of course, I mean, like many companies, we have a specific recruitment process, which is to say that we for every position we need to have female candidates. We are also checking. We want also one woman to be part of the recruitment process, and if we don't, we are asking managers to do the process, to restart the process. Of course, regarding our talents, we are asking 30% of. Just maybe to end, in terms of good practices, we are also following up the KPIs frequently, but what really works in Le Grand is the network. We have now 23 networks spread in all countries, and in India, if I'm not mistaken, the network exists since 5 years, 4 years now. And it's really a way for employees to take this topic, because it's on a voluntary basis, and the network is organizing many events. And I started that it needs to come from the top, but it also needs to come from the population and the employees. And it's really working well in Le Grand. We are organizing many events to promote gender diversity.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah, for this explanation. And I think two practices that I really retain is how you have tried to basically link the progression on D&I to your senior leaders with their compensation practice. So it's a little bit the carrot and the stick, but somehow I see that to achieve your 9 years ambition on gender, that's one key milestone to achieve. And I'm glad that, your board of directors have actually bought up the idea. And what I also like in practice on the ground, to have maybe where feasible, basically one woman to be part of the panel to bring this other lens and ensure, the practices are fair. Along the same lines, and moving now to you, Jay, it was really important for us to have also business representative and not keep, this D&I topic just at an HR discourse level. You also a representative from the banking sector for us in this panel, drawing from your extensive experience in India and now in Hong Kong. And I personally know that you've been quite active in the BNP Paribas Men Allied Network. So what's in a word? So I will let you explain that. And how can men, more importantly, support women to be successful in the workplace? Because we often see a lot of women supporting women, but what is the place that men can play? Is it about mentorship or sponsorship? It's a bit confusing at times to understand which program is the best. We heard different people talking about mentoring now. And what support do you feel men require to become better allies? I'm sorry to all these questions, but I think we are all eager to understand your perspectives on it.
Well, thank you, Nero, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you today. For you, Nero, it's going to be a repetition of everything you hear me say at work, so apologies to you specifically, but happy to share my thoughts. So I'm going to try to remember your questions. If I stray, you will bring me back on track.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so the first one is how can men help women to be successful at work? And I think there are a few sort of pointers, if I may, that I can share. So first of all, I think that Men have to be allies. I mean, which is what I am part of. I'm very proud to be a part of the Male Ally Network, and I think it stems from a fundamental belief in an equal level playing field. You know, a lot of people think I'm part of the Male Ally Network because I have 2 daughters and I talk a lot about them. And I think that's nonsense. I think that even if I had 2 sons or didn't have any children, or wasn't married, did not have strong women in my life, I think I'd still believe in this because it's the right thing to do. And I want to start with that as a premise for the rest of my remarks. Second, I think that we have to also, when I say we men, have to be honest in calling out biased, unacceptable behavior, and also have those honest conversations about unconscious biases with ourselves. I remember many moons ago when I was in my first unconscious bias training at BNP Paribas, it was in India. I was surprised. I mean, you know, I prided myself in not having biases, and I was wrong. At the end of that training session, I realized that I had a few and I had to fix them. And I think you have to be honest and put yourself on that journey, start that journey. I also think that we have to question practices that are not inclusive. You know, a lot of the times we say that we have inclusive practices. We believe that our policies are inclusive. And I believe they are. But the fact of the matter is when we actually work day to day, we may not realize how we actually inadvertently create like I said, playing fields that are not really even, that are not inclusive. For example, and this is my favorite example because I've seen it happen at work, and we try to actively, for example, not do it, is a lot of times, especially I know during my time in India, we had several people who had to get home on time because they had responsibilities at home and would continue working from home. And a lot of the guys would say, let's just go out for a drink after work and continue to talk about it at a bar. And then it became kind of evident to me after a point in time that there were some people of the team that were being excluded, either because they were teetotalers or because they did not want to go to a bar and talk about it for whatever reason, or just did not have the evenings free. It's a very simple example, but it is what I consider to be inadvertent, I'm sure, inadvertent, but not inclusive behavior. And I think we have to start to talk about it and start to make people aware of it. In that vein, I move to my next point. And I think one of you said that earlier, and I really resonate with it, which is those of us in management positions need to make it a point to walk the floor and talk to our teams. You know, as part of the Male Ally Network, I've had the opportunity, the privilege to host breakfast sessions or coffee sessions with a lot of my colleagues. And you hear from them day to day, what they hear, how they feel, how they might feel outnumbered, how they may feel that somebody's talking over them, how they feel that somebody is not listening to them. And sometimes they need a little bit of help. Sometimes they need a bit of a nudge. And sometimes when you are in a decision-making, influencing capacity, you've got to listen to it, not just hear it, but listen to it and go back and influence policy and tell people in those many words, this is not on. And you've got to explain why it's not on. So I would say these are a few of the things that I would share in the context of your first question. You had a question on mentorship versus sponsorship. I think both. I think mentorship is very important. We heard again one of the other panelists speak about mentorship with the COMEX, the executive committee, which I thought was an excellent idea because it does start from the top. The tone has to start from the top. And something I tell a lot of my women colleagues and friends is that, especially in the financial services space, I see that, and I know this is painting a little bit of a stereotype, so apologies in advance, but there is a tendency for men, for example, to network, you know, they network their way through a room. And this is, for example, something that I think is one of the topics that comes up a lot in mentorship meetings, okay? And we have to talk about it. But similarly, we must also celebrate strong silence and not expect that it's only people who make a who make a racket and are loud are successful. There is great strength in being silent and dignified. And that is another thing that we need to talk about in sponsorship meetings, because when we go into the rooms, when we speak about promotions and compensation, and we talk about behaviors to reward and those not to reward, we need to make it a point to not excessively play up your stereotypical behaviors. You see, and this is another important point. So I think there's a role for male allies in mentorship and sponsorship, not either. And you had a question on how men can be supported to be better male allies. So, I mean, assuming these are honest men, as I started my comments with, I think the organization can play a role in supporting them. You know, like the rest of my panelists, I'm very proud that BNP Paribas espouses this completely. You know, we have, I mean, our CEO, Jean-Laurent Bonafé, is extremely vocal about this. We have various initiatives, KPIs, you know, mandates even given to management in this context. We have the Jamais Sans Elle initiative, for example, which is never without her. And this is in the context of panels. This is in the context of industry representation, senior management positions. So I think that's one. Your organization can support you by promoting it and talking about it. Two is, like I said, I think we have to make the conversation on unconscious bias not an abnormal one, but one which is quite necessary and where it's a safe ground for somebody to say, I'm sorry, I had an unconscious bias and I need to fix it. And I think that's absolutely acceptable. And the third is, you know, you practice what you preach. I mean, if I'm going to want to have equal work practice, then I'm going to have to celebrate equal work practice as well. You know, I give you another example. You know, I heard in a meeting once that some of my women colleagues were a bit embarrassed to say they had to go for a school meeting and they had to leave work because they were a bit concerned about what their male colleagues, their men colleagues would think about them. I have daughters and my wife works. She runs a bakery. And it so happened that a few weeks later, she couldn't make it to a meeting that she had signed up for. So I had to scoot in the middle of the day. Otherwise, the school teachers would be a bit upset with me. And so I walked into the meeting and I said, I'm sorry, this is going to have to wait. I'm going to have to go to my kids' school and deal with a math issue. And whatever it is that we're dealing with right now, we'll either wait or you can proceed and send me the material and I will catch up later tonight. And I said it out loud and I said it proudly and that was it.
Okay, thank you so much, Jay. Thank you. Thank you for giving some tips to all of us about, you know, authentic leadership and also walking the talk. But I think what I liked, if I may retain two main things from you, was the visible commitment from the group to say, let's not participate to any panel or any discussions or any meeting without a fair representation of men and women in that particular discussion. And what I really liked was basically the vulnerability to make it normal to talk about unconscious bias, to recognize it and not make it a taboo. I think that was really good, and that was going actually beyond the paradigm that now men needs to be a voice for women. I think that was a really good insight. Thank you so much, Jay, for that. So I think this was really a conversation that we have initiated on gender, but I feel there is more to D&I than this gender paradigm. So let's move on, you know, to LGBT. LGBT has become, you know, more and more widespread in India, especially in the past 2 years. And I know in other European countries for historical, societal reasons, this has started way before. And in the recent years, we have observed many organizations having more and more initiatives on LGBT. So Adi, the question is for you. What are your recommendations to develop an LGBTQ friendly work environment? Okay, and what are the future perspectives? You being a kind of think tank of different organizations, what are the future perspectives that you observe in terms of global trend? And we are also interested to understand through your Indian roots also, like what are the trends you observe in India, which could be useful, for some of our audience today?
Thank you so much, Niru. And gosh, a lot of resonance with what Jay, particularly Jay, what you were saying, because I think a lot of what you were talking about were behaviors which are strongly linked to the culture of organizations. And you also talked about role modeling, which is something so close to my heart, which is all about leadership. But, again, lots of links with what Lani and Sarah were saying in the context of gender. So in terms of recommendations, again, really drawing on the fact that we as an organization work across so many different countries, across so many different cultures, and the opportunity to learn, from working with different organizations and different leaders who are really driving this agenda. I would say, again, I would go back to culture. I feel like I'm a stuck record on culture, but unless one really works on the culture side, there's never right or wrong culture, the culture will always have to suit what is right for that organization at that point. And culture strongly comes from leadership. So culture and leadership are strongly interconnected. But if an organization is able to create an open, welcoming culture, supportive culture, the thing that Jay was talking about, where people feel like they can speak their mind, they're not inhibited not to speak up and say something which is obviously doesn't feel right, then I think a lot of what the inclusion agenda needs to be around LGBTQ plus can be set right. Now, the one thing I'll say is in the context of LGBTQ plus, which I've picked up from talking to a lot of people, is and I would say it's a very strong recommendation from me. It's that being able to create that sense of belonging in that culture. Because no matter how many policies, and I will talk about a couple of policies and practices and associative behaviors, etc., no matter how much of that you have in place, unless you're able to create that sense of belonging, in an organization, right or wrong, where you don't feel like you're being judged for who you are, then we're never going to be able to get to the real stuff around inclusion. And I'm saying this because I know some organizations try really hard, but they still are not able to do it, because it's not a one-way traffic. It's got to happen both ways. You've got to put things in place as an organization. Employees have to feel like they are in a position to be able to respond to that. And then the organization also has to create that supportive environment to feed that. So just a very quick couple of policy on the policy side, Nero, beyond culture. Obviously, hiring policies, incredibly important. The point about open, welcoming, supportive needs to come through from hiring practices itself and policies. If the hiring practices don't have that kind of openness, welcoming, supportive sense, then you're never going to be able to attract the right talent. So hiring, anti-discrimination policies, I think this is something we're seeing a lot across the world. And I know there are a lot of companies in India who are doing that and are really front foot. Then this thing about collaboration. And I say this with all honesty, because a lot of organizations want to do the right thing, but they just don't know where to start themselves because they've not had a culture of doing it. So, organizations forming external links with others in order to do the right things internally, incredibly important. That would be a very strong recommendation from my part, because I don't think there is an excuse not to do any more. A lot of organizations I've heard say, oh, I really like to do that, but I don't know where to begin. Ask someone else, find out how others have done it. All you're going to get is, the worst thing that you're going to get from someone is, no, I won't tell you about my policies. I doubt very much. So not knowing how to do it is no longer an excuse in this space. And I get very bad tempered when I hear organizations saying, I don't know where to begin. Come on, you're willing to scan the internet for all sorts of things, but you're not willing to reach out to another organization to find out how they're doing it. So really important having that collaborative mindset and the benefits piece. Because I think often it falls down in the benefits piece, because that's where it really hits you at a practical level that this organization is not being inclusive, because certain kind of benefits are being offered to people, who have a certain identity, and it's not being offered to others around a different identity. So I'd say those are the practices and policies.
Yes.
I'll end on just a couple of points, Nero, I promise. I think there has to be psychological safety that has to be created. It goes back to my point of culture. And the thing that I feel very passionately about, because I myself feel I don't get it right because I'm not conscious enough about it, is the use of language. In the case of LGBTQ+, use of language is something that really creates or distorts the ability to create inclusive culture. I think it's really, really important. So beyond the realm of policies and practices, use of language and creating that psychological safety. Now, just one sentence on India. The work that we've done in India, I feel there are some companies who are really ahead of the game. Of course, a lot of global entities have brought some of their practices from different parts of the world, like the Microsofts and the Accenture. But when it comes to Indian entities, I think Tata Steel and Godrej have done some amazing work in this space. I'm sure there are others. So forgive me for naming two, but those are the two organizations I personally have felt and heard are really doing some, doing some things which is making people feel like they belong and creating that psychological safety for their employees internally. I'll pause at that, very conscious of time. But again, if there's time for questions, happy to take them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Adi. We are really running out of time in such a very fascinating debate. I will just take a quick, fireside style with one word each quickly on different topics. So starting with Sarah. Disability is another big piece of D&I, and it's true that many organizations lack sometimes different examples. If there is one impactful practice that you can share that you have done at Legrand, and I know you have done extensive practices in that field, what would be that practice around disability that you could share with us? And then I'll quickly move to Jay and Lani on a quick question regarding gender. Yeah.
Okay. Is not a new topic because we've been working on this topic since 30 years now. Not just because, but probably because we have a legal frame in France that impose companies to take care about the topic. But if I had, I would say one impactful practice, we need to communicate on disability. We need to explain to the employees what is disability, what it means. We need to explain that being disabled, it's not necessarily visible because 80% of people have disability. And the role of the employees to communicate and to make people understand that being disabled doesn't mean being less competent. And once we have a good communication on this topic by, for example, using someone from the company who is disabled, I'm just going to give you a quick example, but our HR VP in France has some problems hearing, and he had a wonderful career within Legrand, and we can, in terms of communication, he was very supportive to all the action that have been implemented in France. So just to sum up, the communication and make people understand what it means being disabled is the essential thing, I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sarah, for your insights on disability. And finalizing now with Lani and Jay, one question each on this fireside. Lani, do you think quota should be fixed and should become the norm in order to achieve some of the gender diversity targets? And for you, Jay, we all have heard about the different performance evaluation, rewards, career management practices. Is it really biased? And more significantly, what we want to hear is how do you address that bias? So Lani, let's start with you, and then we can swiftly move to Jay and close the panel.
Sure. So numbers, well, I would say in France, we just celebrated the 10th anniversary of Cope-Zimmermann law, which makes it compulsory for companies that have more than 250 employees to have at least 40% women on their board. And 10 years later, we see in France that this is leading. They're the world leader in gender diverse boards, and many of the surveys show that the members of these boards are happy with the balance that they've achieved in terms of the discussions they're having, how they're solving challenges, and the role that D&I is meant to play is working. So as I said earlier, when you work on establishing D&I, you need to track progress from a situation A that you want to fix or improve to a situation B. And you have to use numbers. They're great because they bring rational, undisputable evidence in complex situations that are filled with emotions and sometimes misinformation. So at Pernod Ricard and with my team, my global talent management team, we have brought this discipline of looking at numbers in the areas of recruitment, promotion. Part of our new HR strategy was to equip the group with a global and reliable system, which we're able to use to generate lots of data and to track the progress that we're making. So on gender and diversity, we started to target as part of our S&R roadmap, as many companies are doing, and some of the examples also mentioned by Sarah, where we want to reach a certain balance with our top management level by 2030. And we know that we need to start from somewhere, and we need to know where we want to go. And with this global tool and increased attention to data, we're able to really track our progress toward this objective. So it's really interesting because it's creating kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, whereby starting from these numerical targets that our top management is committed to, and with the data from our systems now, we're able to make a quantum of our challenge very concrete with simple metrics. And we've been able to push to think differently about talent development, promotions, not only to get the numbers, but more importantly, thinking about how we can find solutions to get the understanding and the buy-in from our workforce to make this significant change. So net, yes, I think that these two aspects have to work in synergy. It's all about balance. You can't have it in silos. I don't think you can run D&I by numbers only, absolutely, as it's a sensitive topic, as I said, but you cannot run D&I without numbers either. Because you need to be able to have, of course, measure this imbalance both from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective.
Superb. Thank you so much, Lani. Jay, what are your views?
So your question to me was about evaluation, performance evaluation, compensation practices, and whether I think they're biased. I mean, that's a very broad question. Are they biased at BNP Paribas? I should think not. There's a difference between practices and practitioners. And I think that a practice is not usually designed to be biased, but a practitioner's view of the process could be. So I would say there are two things to keep my comments terse and to the point, if I can share suggestions. So one practice, and I allude to something I said in my earlier comments, is to ensure that the things that we have in the past put a lot of focus on, that the industry has put a lot of focus on. For example, and you know this in our year-end discussions as well, I don't consider any kind of proposal on promotion that is based on so-and-so worked really late, or so-and-so, worked the weekend. Because, there's nothing to say that somebody who had other needs at home to balance or left early was any less efficient or less competent. Okay, so we've got to, I really like the comment on language, even if it was made in another context. There's a lot to be said and done about evening out and examining the language that we accept and base our evaluations on and choose to reward. And this is quite key. It takes years to get it right. It takes relentless effort year after year, and it takes putting your foot down, stomping your foot down and saying, I'm sorry, but what part of my suggestion did you not understand? And sometimes, you will have to take some tough calls for people to get the message. The second is, I'm relieved to hear about the KPIs, because when this conversation started, I thought there was a bit of dismissiveness around KPIs. I was quite relieved that we've come back to accepting KPIs as an important part of the conversation, because numbers, as Lani said, don't lie. And I think that conversations must start on the basis of fact. And then you take the conversation further. And I think that, again, in your year-end practices, be it around compensation related to gender pay gap, be it related to promotions, percentages of promotions, men versus women, you've got to look at these KPIs closely, and you've got to challenge your teams when warranted, when the KPIs suggest bias. I mean, when in a certain population or team, the percentage of men at a certain rating level far exceed that of the percentage of women, that would suggest bias, because there's nothing to suggest that men are going to be better performers than women. I mean, that you can't, that's irrefutable. That conversation or that suggestion becomes irrefutable. Then you get into why. Maybe there are circumstances, and you keep the conversation open. But you have to be relentless. It takes a lot of work. It is tiring, but you sometimes, and it can be very emotional, because people can take things very personally, especially when you're challenging their discretion and their judgment. But this is why we do what we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jay. Big thank you to you, Adi, Jay, Lani, and Sarah for being part of this panel discussion. I wish we had even more time, because I think this topic is huge. But if I have to summarize in few words, all your topic, it's not just about gender, but I think it's about gender, LGBT, disability. And when I have to summarize and look at the overall picture with the different notes I try to make across your different practices, it's about looking at the culture, first of all. I think we started with you, Adi, on that. Jay, you went along talking about having honest and frank discussion around unconscious bias. Lani, I think you've been really clear to say that basically it's not just about some kind of lip service that we try to do, but we really need to measure. Without measuring, we can't manage. If we can't manage, we can't influence our senior stakeholders, whatever the stream of D&I we are referring to. Jay, Lani, and Sarah, and also Adi, you had some real views and strong opinion about, having proper programs regarding gender diversity. If we want to make the needle move more naturally, such as different mechanism to set in place, like such as mentoring, sponsorship, linking, the reward of your senior leaders with specific quotas related to diversity. That's the way you make the needle move. And I like how we ended up the discussion, coming back to leadership trait. Okay, you all mentioned about being vulnerable, not make it a taboo, review the way we talk, our language, come back to the basic, and make it factual. I think these are my key takeaways of this D&I panel. I'm sure all of you would have different takeaways, but I will really cherish this one, and I will pass it on now to Shrikant and Sapna. To bring this whole HR conclave first day into a good conclusion. Over to you, Shrikant and Sapna.
Thank you, Niru.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Niru. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Shrikant. Yeah. Go ahead.
Niru, thank you so much for so effectively moderating the panel and bringing the best out of this discussion. And it was really thrilling to listen to each of the speakers here. Thanks, Lani. Thanks, Sarah, Jay, and Adirupa for sharing wonderfully your thoughts and experiences. You really added a lot of value and provided inspiration to us. I appreciate your time to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shrikant.
So with that, we come to the closure of day one of agenda. And I'm sure each one of you must have enjoyed the interactions since this afternoon. My apologies, we are a little late in the day for that, but I'm sure these rich discussions would have kept you engaged. I'd request Niru now, our Vice Chairman of the HR Committee, to give brief closing remarks before we close the day. Niru?
Superb. Thank you so much, Shrikant, and thank you for all the panelists. So if I have to summarize today's session, and I try to take as much as possible from the different feedback. I was really impressed, I must say, from all our panelists and all our leaders. But I think what I retain is the ability to bounce back rapidly. That's the whole purpose of this first edition, Shrikant, that we are all leading all together on resilience, leading to renaissance. We need to redefine the new normal. There has been a lot of impact, change in business model, changes offices, change in the way we are looking at human resources. And let's not wait, as Cedric said at the beginning, any learnings from this crisis. That will really be a pity. We should take it, as many of the speakers said, as an acceleration, as a way to accelerate our transformation. It's also a good way to bring a really long-term perspective about how we are now going to do the business. Many researchers talk about reset button with this COVID. So I know there has been a lot of dramatic consequences, but within a business perspective, let's also look at all the positive this has brought. I also liked one of the advert that we saw in terms of transcending all the barriers of colors, gender, and make us unique. On the first panel, the main learnings that I had was really empowering more and more on the key leadership trait. We need to empower more our team, make the decision at the smallest level of the organization, because no organization are going to become more and more decentralized. Leadership to focus on change, preserve all our energy level, because this crisis can be tiring. And many other panelists talked about, working long hours and things, and we are in a marathon. Things that we thought were impossible became possible. And I mean, it's our survival instinct that has played off. And we need to keep on stimulating more and more collaborative working. That's the main learnings that we had from this first panel on the leadership. On the D&I panel, I'm not going to re-summarize it again. We have just closed that panel. So big thank you to all of you. Thank you to all our panelists who are all in very, very key positions in their respective organization and who took time to come and meet us. Big thank you to the audience. We had, so many connections today. Thank you for the entire HR committee and the IFCCI HR team, Sapna Verma and her entire team, Shrikant, you, Pallavi, and then of course, all the people who have supported us in the entire logistics of this event. Big thank you.
Thank you, Nirip, and very well summarized and well captured. So I would like to invite Sapna Verma, our Head of HR and Recruitment Services at IFCCI, to propose a vote of thanks to all speakers, participants, and sponsors again, and share a few words. Welcome, Sapna.
Thank you so much, Shrikant and Nirupan. Thank you. So on behalf of IFCCI, I would like to thank each one of you for attending the first day of the IFCCI HR Conclave 2021. This is the first edition of our flagship event, and we really appreciate your interest and enthusiasm to be a part of this session. I would like to thank all our speakers and panelists for sharing their valuable insights and experiences and providing important takeaways that business leaders and HR professionals can implement in their organizations. Most importantly, I would like to thank the leadership of the IFCCI HR Committee, Shrikant Lonikar, CHRO Pernod Ricard India, Pallavi Tyagi, CHRO Capgemini, and Nibruban Rupathevan, BNP Paribas, Head HR, BNP Paribas GSO, for their continuous support and guidance for organizing this HR conclave. We also appreciate the involvement and the participation of all the HR committee members in making this platform a success. Before closing, I would once again like to thank our event sponsors, Platinum sponsors Capgemini, EM Lyon Business School and Pernod Ricard, Gold sponsors Amadeus Labs, Silver sponsors Locron and Sodexo Benefits and Rewards Services India. We also thank our media partner, People Matters, and knowledge partner, Trilegal, for their support. I'd like to close the session by inviting you all to join in tomorrow for day 2 of the HR Conclave. We have a very interesting lineup of speakers from leading French and Indian companies and panel discussions on new employment models and mental well-being and building resilience at the workplace. So thank you all once again, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sapna.
Thank you,
Shrikant. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Yes, thank you.